merciful Father, we ask that you look down on our city this evening. Bless the mayor, bless our citizens, and the men of this council, that we do the right thing for the betterment of our city. These and many other blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Let us exercise a moment of silence for Robert William Yankee McCain, the father of Mark McCain from the police department, Joseph Curtis Nall, the son of James Nall, one of our public works employees. Thank you.
Salute. Pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, and I wish to welcome you to this meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen. Ms. Goldman, roll call, please, to determine a quorum.
Mr. Moore.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mr. Locke.
Here.
All present except Mr. Mason, Mayor.
May the record reflect your roll call. We're entering into this festive season with Thanksgiving coming up and Christmas around the corner. So this 'tis the season to be jolly. I have just a few announcements. Really had a very busy day, so I haven't had a chance to put them in chronological order as I normally do, so just bear with me. We're really proud for the opening of the new historic building. I've toured that building, Chief Montgomery and I, and it's just extremely nice. So we're looking forward to opening that building. Extremely proud of the crowd we had at the Mack Center. Well participated with the arts and crafts show. Certainly would be great if we had something every month that would pull people into town to just showcase what we are about. Had a real good meeting today on the airport development, and you're going to hear a presentation on that, and I certainly want to welcome our gentlemen here from out of town and thank them for the hard work they have done on that particular plan. Please remind your neighbors and folks in the community about the North Louisiana Community Enhancement Corporation under Reverend Payne Montgomery. They have an itinerary of different activities, and I have a notice posted on my bulletin board, or if you'd like to get a copy of it, if you know somebody that's in need from a family member or something, please refer them to that organization for assistance. We're getting ready to start our Miracle Memory fundraiser again this year, and had a real good press conference today. The newspaper will have an article published on it. Just to give you a little background information, the first year we assisted, I believe, about 75 children, wasn't it? D. Tubbs has worked with us on that project. And last year we provided assistance for 147 children. So you can make your contributions, should you so desire to make a contribution to the Miracle Memory Fund, and that account is held at Shreveport Federal Credit Union. They have already given us some seed money. We had some money left over from last year, so this is certainly a very worthy cause to help those who are less fortunate than we are during the holiday season. I received a letter from an out-of-town guest, and I'll read this letter to you. Mayor Olive, I grew up in Bastrop and graduated from Bastrop High in 1943. After living there many years, I moved to Hot Springs Village 4 years ago. I had the pleasure of being in Bastrop this past week to attend church and could see all of my old friends. What a pleasure it was. The city of Bastrop has never looked better. Everything was so clean, and fresh looking. I just want to say a special thank you to all of the people who worked so hard to see this job was well done and who are continuing to follow through with this job. I understand that a special thank you goes to Mr. Willie McKee, a special thank you to my dear friend Vicki Carpenter too. Again, a special thank you for a job well done, and it's good to get letters like that, and it's certainly my pleasure to take the time to read such an acknowledgement to you. We are about to enter into a phase where we are required to have ethics training, and this training is for each elected member, appointed member, and employee of your municipality is considered a public servant as defined by LA Revised Statute 4211-2019. So the city is coordinating with the State Board of Ethics to host and offer this training at the Bastrop Municipal Center on January the 18th. I offered the Municipal Center to Mr. Durham since Bastrop serves as the county seat and we have the largest facility available. So I was able to talk with him and convince him that we need to have more than just one session. We need to have at least 3 sessions, and he agreed that he would do a follow-up session. So we'll work with them to get all of the communication out for that date. Ms. Goldman, if you would give Wes a copy of this letter for press release that this is required training in the year 2012, and all municipalities are having to adhere to this. We are continuing to pursue funding for capital outlay. I'd like to acknowledge letters of support that we received that the city requested to Senator Walsworth and Representative Little on capital outlay. We are requesting funding to replace the Central Fire Station driveway. Chief Montgomery and I have been talking about that, and also to do something about the roof on the City Hall. That may be a far stretch with the roof, but it doesn't hurt to ask, does it? You never know until you do so. Let's see. Veterans Day event with Main Street and Library at the Visitor Center, 6 p.m. tonight. I was supposed to go there, but if I can make it, if we get out early enough, I will make my tour over there. But they understand that we have Bastrop City Council meeting tonight. The holiday open house, 1 to 5 p.m. Sunday, November the 13th. I've already talked to you about the Miracle Memory, the Polar Express movie Tuesday, November 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Visitor Center. And I believe that concludes my announcements. Are there any other announcements? Or, Ms. Goldman, if there's anything that I've missed, okay. Do you have any announcements? No. All right. Thank you. Item number 4, public comments as they relate to items on the agenda. Mr. Carter, if you would come to the podium, state your name, your address, and the item of reference on the agenda that you wish to speak to.
My name's Ron Carter. I'm the administrator for Morehouse Sales Tax Commission, and I'd like to make some comments on item 9, which is peddlers in historical district. A week or so ago, I got an email from, I think it was Susan, about the peddlers that was going to talk about this, and also Ron Israel called me yesterday, asked me an opinion of the peddlers in the city. All I can tell you is that the peddlers that we have, I get very little sales tax from them. I've been doing this for like 15 years here in Morehouse Parish. I've sued about somewhere between 2 and 6 peddlers. I've got judgment, but I've never got any money. Now, I don't get a lot, so basically what I'm saying, we get very little sales tax from these vendors when they come in. I don't know what the occupation license is on those, but by the time you find them, they pack up and leave, and I get very little money. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Carter, for that presentation. Are there any other comments as they relate to items on the agenda? Item number 5. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the previous minutes, regular meeting October 13th, and special meeting October 24th, 2011.
I make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
Properly moved and second. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, Finance Committee Report, Resolution 111413, Bills and Claims for the month of October 2011. Mr. Locke.
Mayor, I move that we receive the report of the resolution 111433, bills and claims for the month of October. 11413, bills and claims for the month of October 2011.
Properly moved by Mr. Locke
I second that motion.
and second by Mr. Moore. Item number 7, Ms.
Mayor,
K.
we need a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Item number 7, Ms. K. King, Morehouse Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. Always nice to be here. I've got a little bit of business that I want to take care of or present tonight. But I wanted to say it has been a very busy day today, and I was very pleased at our introduction to e-commerce. We had over 20 attendees in that. We have a lot of businesses that are interested in getting their websites online, and getting a website and getting their business exposure online and increasing that customer base beyond the parish. So I'm glad to see that we had so much interest in that. We're going to continue to work with those companies and businesses and individuals start businesses, and so I was very glad Dr. Barnes from LSU Ag Center came and presented that program, and I think it was very well received. And I want to move on into something that I know that has been a big topic of interest is the Ditto building. And I've got some information to pass out here, but I'm ready to get very aggressive at marketing this building. Not that we haven't been aggressive, and we've had a number of people interested in the building, and I got a call today. So, there are people interested in this building, but we need to look at this a little bit more aggressive than what we have. And the main problem is that I do not have a sale price for that building. And it's very difficult to get a sale price on the building because there's not that many buildings that are like this building, and appraisals are very expensive, and the building has a lot of functional obsolescence that we've discussed, that this was built for a garment factory, has a 4-inch slab that's in good condition, but it's still a very lightweight slab, has lower ceiling heights. The main type of business that the Ditto building would appeal to is a company that needs a lot of square footage for some type of large construction of something and I've had a few people come to me with things like mats and things that took a lot of floor space. And so there are businesses out there that could use this building, but most of the time those type of businesses that won't need a lot of square footage and they're really producing these large items, they really can't pay the amount that it takes to build a building the size of the Ditto building and be economical. So those are the people that we're going to need to attract. Now, I've been putting this building out. I say, I'm sorry, didn't mean to hit that. I say that the city will consider all offers. I have it on the state website. It says the price is negotiable. But we really need to get something that's a little more pinpoints exactly what the city might be willing to do. So with your permission, I would like to pass out some laws on the regulations for transfer of property by political subdivisions for industrial inducement purposes. And this means that you're making a special deal, but it's within the law. And I think I've shared this on a few occasions. We've discussed this, but never in an open meeting where we could actually do this. So I'd like to give you this. This is very thick, so we're probably not going to get an answer on this tonight. Can I leave one for Mr. Mason?
Yes, and give one to Mr. Lawrence, please.
I'll give you two. And I'll give Mr. Lawrence. Oh, there's one. No, work my way back around. This is kind of a separate phase of what I'm going to talk about. So, as we read through this, we'll see that under this statute, which is, let me read the statute number, it's 33:4717.2, that deals with the transfer of properties that are owned by municipalities and governmental agencies and what they can do for inducement to provide incentives for companies to come to that community. And basically what we're looking at is that we have to calculate the value of a building in exchange for the economic development benefits that it's going to produce for the community. So I wanted to go over a little bit about, and well, let me finish on this. There's some advertising requirements and some things that you have to go through the legal process to make sure that nobody has any objections to it. It's all outlined in this statute. So just to give you a little background on the Ditto building, there's 151 and some odd square feet, 151,000 square feet. The appraisal that I have in my office, which was the last appraisal that I have any record of, was done in 1999, and the building appraised for $600,000. At that time, the city was already entertaining the idea of acquiring this building because it was vacant. It was a large building. It was vacant. And I know former Mayor Hawkins, he had some really good ideas on what to do with the building, but plans are like everything else. One of the ideas was data storage, and the requirements for data storage just got smaller and smaller and smaller, and here you are with 151,000 square feet, and we got data storage everywhere, out on the cloud and every place else now. So there's not really that demand for data storage. So the building was purchased in 2005 after many years of trying to get this purchase, and I know Mr. Lawrence was involved in this, and it was a long, drawn-out process. And then it was purchased in the beginning of 2005, and then later in that summer, we were hit by Hurricane Katrina, and all of the money that had been set aside for further improvements on that building was just taken out of the program. We were kind of in a Katrina void there for a year after that event. So we just never really got our feet on the ground about this building. So I'd like for the city to develop an offer that we can say that we will make it available for economic development incentives according to this statute. Then I'd also like to look at some city requirements on this that we could possibly outline, and I would like some input from Mr. Lawrence on this, that, I believe that the building should produce a minimum of 35 jobs, and that is a very minimum. I would like for the building to produce more than that, but sometimes when you're talking about jobs and a $700,000 payroll, you're ruling out a lot of startup businesses if they got to make that kind of payroll. And I'd like for the company to demonstrate the financial ability or the backing to renovate the building into a functional state without any additional city funding, that we can make that clear. And that one of the things about economic development incentives that I think is very important for a municipality or a parish or a state is that we should make sure that this company, whatever company it might be, doesn't compete with our local businesses. That's one of the prime things that most people don't understand about. If they want to start a business, that you really need to look for businesses that are going to bring in some kind of new business. You don't want to bring in something that's going to compete with people that are already here, that are taxpayers that started their business without any assistance. So we have to be very careful to consider, what type of business. But I can assure you that any kind of manufacturing business that we're probably going to be talking to is probably not going to be competitive. But I just want to reassure people, because I think that's something that's very misunderstood about the economic development process. So what I'd like to do tonight is just give you this, and I'd like to come back if we can structure something that I can put on this building that says something besides make an offer or negotiable or all offers will be considered, and that it's brought in the forefront before this city council so that you're aware of what we're trying to do. And I'd like at this time do you have any questions about this, or support of it, or against it, or comments?
Let me just kind of do a recap, Ms. King, and we talked earlier about how to market the Ditto building, and it is my appreciation and understanding to help you in marketing that building for us. You're asking for a minimum standard tool, basically, that would help you to facilitate that process.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that I'm not just making some off-the-cuff offer, that I've got the backing of the city, the mayor, and the city council to make a certain offer to a company.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence, based on what you've heard thus far, do you see anything that this council needs to take under consideration with this request?
Sure. I like what Ms. King has said. I like the parameters that she's put forth. The one thing here that has to be done is an appraisal, and that's kind of tricky because when you get an appraisal, it's got a shelf life of 12 months. So it becomes a matter of, do you want to, if you were about to embark upon this, do you want to do it now and incur that expense, which is a reasonable thing to do, understanding that it has that 12-month shelf life, and you probably would need to upgrade it and renew it if you don't do something in 12 months. Or if Mrs. King went out and made an offer, her offer would always be subject to appraisal. To be, look, make us an offer to purchase this building. You do understand, though, whatever offer you make, interested party, it has to be at least what the appraised value is. So it's like you can go and get this done now, or you can have it where that offer is
we could wait, because the offer that's made by this company is not going to be a dollar offer. It's going to be a contractual type offer, and I think at the time that we do that, that we could get on the appraisal, and we could go through the numbers on what kind of economic development benefit that was going to be derived from it.
Now, I'll say this too. I like her concept about the minimum number of jobs, because I can tell you that became an issue before. I remember one time someone called me about this building. They wanted to use it for, I think, cotton storage. Well, that wasn't going to create a lot of jobs. I mean, it could have rented it, but if job creation is the objective, I think that you have to think in these terms. So, you know, I like the concept of minimum number of jobs. And I think what she's saying to you is this: there are ways to buy this building from the city other than paying cash. Part of that consideration in lieu of cash can be, we will generate X number of jobs, or we will engage in certain other activities that will create some tangible benefit that can be measured. Typically, that is a certain number of jobs. And that's an economic development model that is often used for industrial park property. Person or the business maintains X number of jobs over a certain number of quarters. They will receive yearly quarters. They will receive a corresponding amount of financial credit, which is a credit toward the purchase price. After they do it, it becomes theirs. So I think that's the point that she's trying to make. And Ms. King, I don't know that I don't want to speak for you, but you may want to be a little bit clearer about exactly what you want us to do right now. If you're saying that you want to be able to say that you have the authority to enter, I guess, to initiate a buy-sell agreement or something. I mean, is that what you're saying, or?
I don't necessarily need the authority to initiate this. I want the authority to advertise it, that what we can advertise to kind of bring this into something like we will work to structure an economic development package.
I see.
And that's what the help I need from you. But I think you did a very good job of explaining how job credits and I think even investment in rehabilitation of the building and a lot of things could come into play, because right now we have a deteriorating building out there, and at a certain point we may reach a point where it's more feasible to tear that building down, which could cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars just to tear the building down. And I think that area in there has a lot of potential for business development, which we need desperately on the west side. And so I think that we could try to look at this law on what we can do and apply it to the most liberal standard to be within the law, to get somebody to locate in that building.
Okay, Mayor and Council, I think where we're at then, it's a matter of your being able to, as you say, market it and to make certain representations about your authority to be able to market it for the city. And it's a question of, are you amenable to that? Understanding that if a deal is about to come to fruition, there will be some other things that will happen. We'll get into the details then. But I think I understand your point. You want to be able to say that you have the
Blessings,
Yes.
but the blessings of this city council, and that I'm not going to come to you with a deal and that you're not going to know what I'm working on. You know, that this is just completely out of the blue. And that I want you to be involved in this process. And like I said, you know, we can't give property away. We can't advertise that we're going to give somebody a building, but we have to have some kind of guidelines on it. But I think it's lined out very well in this statute, and if Mr. Lawrence, if he researches this statute and doesn't find any kind of problem with it, I'd like to be able to advertise that we would be willing to structure a deal for job credits and other economic development benefits to get a business in this building.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Ms. King? I certainly appreciate this concept, Ms. King. I believe coming up for our next meeting, if time permits, you can draft a more formal request and we can do it in form of a vote, Mr. Lawrence.
And I would certainly like Mr. Lawrence's input into that formal request to make
Absolutely.
sure that it's right. Like I said,
Absolutely.
he understands this. He's done this on some other projects, and he is very knowledgeable about what we need to do and how this needs to be worded.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. King. We certainly need all the help we can with marketing that building. It has been dormant for a number of years. I did have an architect to take a look at it about 2 years ago, and he seemed to have had the feeling there was still some hope to salvage it, but I know that we still cannot completely abandon the idea that at some point in time it may have to be marketed as a site instead of a site with a building on it. Ms. King works closely with Mr. Short, Kelsey Short, who we have worked with the city also, so the legitimacy of working through a process like this is so contingent on the state, so I think it would work itself out in terms of credibility. If we have a legitimate company to pursue and make an offer and they have to make their appeal to the state, that certainly aids us in feeling a level of comfort to move forward. So,
And it provides me a level of comfort to know that the city council and the mayor, and I know that, you know, I've never had any other feelings, but that you are behind this and you're actively involved in it.
absolutely. Council members, are you okay with proceeding in this respect as indicated tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, if you'll get that information to us, we'll get it to Mr. Lawrence and fine-tune the language of it. Thank you, Ms. King. Item number 8, Michael Cotlow, the LPA Group Morehouse Memorial Airport layout update. As they come to the podium, and these are the two gentlemen that I met with earlier today, and certainly appreciate the information they provided to us about a 20-year projected plan for the airport. I was looking through to find my notes. We are moving, and this goes back to announcements, we're moving a little closer to making a recommendation to this council on the acquisition of additional acreage for our new industrial site. We've been working through some soil testing and evaluating and looking at a lot of information. So we are a little closer to making a recommendation to this council.
Well, I want to thank the mayor and city council for allowing me to speak here tonight about the airport layout plan update for Morehouse Memorial Airport. We've been working with the mayor and Brent, the airport manager, over the past several months to develop a 20-year development plan for the airport. An airport layout plan update is kind of like a city master plan or a parish master plan, let's say, where we look at what you have currently and what you're going to need 20 years from now and even then some. So airport layout plan updates are required by the FAA in order to receive federal funds for airport projects. Your airport is eligible for federal funds because you're part of the national system. At Morehouse Memorial Airport, the FAA pays for 95% of eligible items like pavement projects and safety projects, and the DOTD kicks in the remaining 5%. So
you guys are left with, no cost to you for a lot of the improvement projects at the airport, including this study. There's a lot of steps involved in an airport layout plan update study, like a city master plan. You look at the inventory of what you have. You forecast future growth expectations for the airport. You look at requirements necessary to accommodate those forecasts in terms of your airfield, your runway, your taxiways, your safety standards, and also, some of your hangar development needs and also, whether or not you need additional fueling facilities. The next thing we look at is a land use analysis. How can you best use this property? And that's what we do in an airport layout plan study. In other more detailed studies, maybe like a master plan for an airport, we might look at multiple alternatives. But here, we're looking more at what type of impacts to the land certain developments might have, or what opportunities your property has for accommodating certain types of developments. And that's kind of why the mayor wanted us to speak here tonight, or wanted me to speak here tonight, because you really do have a tremendous asset here in the city in terms of an airport, and you do have a lot of growth potential for the airport, considering the amount of property that you have available to you to accommodate numerous hangars, or even a long-term airfield development plan that will bring in additional corporate traffic or general aviation traffic to your airport. And this is what you have currently. You have a 4,002-foot long runway, which is a fairly long runway for accommodating the traffic that you have currently, and even it can accommodate some smaller jets if needed on an occasional basis, and turboprop aircraft, which are kind of your aircraft that are used for corporate traffic in and out of smaller airports, but still you see a few of them year to year. The majority of your facilities are located, well, all your facilities, are located around your terminal apron. This is kind of the key focus area for the study in terms of, where else can we develop? Right now, everything is located around your terminal apron, and there isn't really a separation by function. There isn't really an ease of expansion plan set in stone yet for the airport, and that's what we were looking at. We were looking at ways that you can expand in a smart way that would limit infrastructure costs, would separate developments a little bit more, and make them a little bit easier year to year to expand if needed. This next slide just shows you the facilities around your terminal apron. I'm not going to explain all of them, but it's been a little while since a facility has really been constructed at this airport, partially because in the past few years, over the past several years, you've lost based aircraft at the airport, so there hasn't been a need to construct new facilities. But we're looking here today, and there are some opportunities out there that we've all heard about for accommodating new based aircraft and constructing new facilities. This is an interesting slide. We were looking at what are the benefits of this airport in terms of the regional airports around you. There's really 4 or 5 general aviation airports in northeast Louisiana, the one shown in blue in the graphic above, and then you have Monroe Regional, which is your commercial airport. When you look at the 4 general aviation airports in northeast Louisiana, you have the longest runway and you have the most acreage. In fact, if you combine the acreage of the other 4, you still have more, which is, shows you what you can do with your property. There's a lot of available land to develop hangars, and there's a lot of interest in this part of, within your city, I guess, to accommodate new based aircraft and opportunities at your airport. So, when I was doing the research and I saw that, I thought, that's a very interesting fact, and it shows you really that, you have more of a competitive advantage, maybe, than the remaining general aviation airports in the region. We also look at forecasts in the airport layout plan update study. I'm not going to get in too much detail, but we obviously project growth in operations and in based aircraft because we're looking at we anticipate growth, first of all, and we're also looking at developing a plan that illustrates additional facilities to accommodate growth. So we always want to be optimistic and assume that some growth is going to occur, so that we can plan for the 20-year period and beyond. And the factors that we consider in developing these forecasts are really looking at some statewide growth trends and nationwide growth trends to increase your numbers a little bit. The requirements analysis, as I mentioned, is looking at what you're going to need over the next 20 years based on our forecasts. And this is the turboprop aircraft I was talking about. It's a Beechcraft King Air 350i. You don't get too many of these operations currently. It's an aircraft that requires jet A fuel, but your airport has been designed for this category of aircraft over the past several years, at least since your last ALP was developed. So moving forward, we want to continue to design your airport according to really the design standards associated with this aircraft. And you can see that we come up with a whole slew of requirements as we go through the process. Now, the land use analysis is what I was talking about, is really the core of this study. The FAA is coming to a lot of airports nowadays and saying, you know, look at where your facilities are currently. They're all clumped together around this one common apron area, and there isn't really a plan in place to provide ease of expansion, reduced infrastructure cost, and separation of traffic. Those are really the three main goals of a solid hangar development plan. And really what we tried to do was, first of all, accommodate those goals and present something that you guys can use to market potential users of this airport. You can show them the graphics. You can talk about the things we're talking about tonight, what we're trying to accommodate, and having a plan in place and being able to hand it to somebody and say, look, this is what we want to do. This is our long-term goal, and we have a solid development plan. That is really what attracts a lot of business investment. And doing this today, certainly we have the ability to produce better-looking graphics than in the past few years, and that's always a good thing. But I think we developed a solid plan working with the mayor and Brent over the past several months that really we think will help achieve the goals of bringing in a mix of traffic to this airport. Now I preface this that we're not saying that a runway extension is justified at this time. We're just looking at the FAA requirements say that for that aircraft, if you have a certain number of them at some point in the future, you're going to need a certain runway length. And what we do is we look at the impacts associated with a runway extension of that length. Our number was 5,500 feet. You currently have 4,002 feet, so we're looking at a 1,490-foot extension in either direction and the impacts thereof. And we looked at parcel impacts, I'll call them, utility and road impacts, and some impacts to buildings. Now, the 16 extension, the hypothetical land use analysis here, illustrates far more impacts to off-airport buildings, utilities, roads, than would be associated with the runway 3-4 extension to the south. And that's why, just looking at that, even though the 3-4 extension would require additional property, more property, about 37, 38 acres versus 29 acres, there are no impacts really except acquiring property. And, whatever through your environmental analysis findings would be found. But just a simple land use analysis look at it, that was our conclusion. So when we did our preferred alternative, we illustrated the 3-4 extension just so you, as a city, have the ability to plan for the long-term need of that extension if it should arise. And I know you have zoning, the city has zoning around the airport that protects some of the existing and ultimate approach areas. And if this was something that the city wanted to amend their zoning for, to say we want to reserve this area and we want to protect the airspace for that ultimate extension, there's nothing that, with the exception of some, whatever the property encumbrances are on those off-airport properties, there's nothing that says you can't adopt that or amend your zoning to reserve for those ultimate approach areas of the 3-4 extension that we're illustrating on the preferred alternative. This is an important component of the study as well, looking at the different sections of your airport property and what makes sense as far as aviation development and potential non-aviation development. Really, aviation development, you always reserve the areas on either side of the taxiway. So everything you see here in Zone 1, excuse my pointer, I guess, 2 and 3 are your ultimate development areas that are most likely to be utilized, over the next 20 years. Even beyond that, it can accommodate demands. C is your existing development area. And then 5 and 6, if ultimately needed, at some point down the line, you could construct a taxiway on that side and put additional facilities in that location. We were talking about access earlier, and there's some opportunities to access those areas as well. This area to the north here, the north on this graphic, and this area right here, 4, we didn't really see a lot of opportunities for aviation development in those areas. And for that reason, we reserve them for other purposes, up to the discretion of the city at some point in the future. This illustrates the preferred alternative that we developed for the airport, and this is the culmination of all that analysis and what's also illustrated on the airport layout plan set that has to be officially approved by the FAA. And I was talking before about the separation of traffic by function, and I'm using the words general aviation and corporate to talk about two different categories. General aviation is more the private piston owners who want to keep their planes in their own individual hangar bays, typically a T hangar, which is a building that's subdivided into multiple bays, 5 to 10 garages almost for aircraft. So in this area, we illustrated some of those T hangar type facilities. We had to work within the confines of this taxi lane that was constructed a few years ago. We were also able to get a number of smaller hangars in this area as well. Within your existing terminal apron area, and these I would consider really the short-term projects that could be constructed. If somebody wanted to come out there tomorrow and build a hangar, where's the next logical place to do it and where can they do it? There's a room around your existing terminal apron for them to construct one. So we have some of those facilities in that area as well. And then also we show these larger developments to illustrate. This one primarily illustrates what you can do with the depth of your property. If you were to develop facilities like these two across there, you would limit the amount of potential area back here that you could use for aviation purposes. So these are just conceptual hangar developments that we show. You don't have to construct them in this way, but it just to illustrate what you can do with your property and what the opportunities are. And again, this area down here, we didn't see a lot of use for aviation purposes. If you can see, you have 8 10,000 square foot hangars in this area, which is that's 3 times as much hangars as you currently have in this area. So there's a lot of opportunities for hangar development at this airport, and there's also a lot of opportunities for considering other uses for sections of the airport property, if you so desire. I talked a little bit about the grants you're eligible for from the FAA and the LA DOTD. And, it's a really, in my opinion, a great thing that you're able to get all this money per year to invest in the airport, to spend money on construction at the airport. And, all the money comes from users of the aviation system, so it's not really a burden to taxpayers. 95% of most of your project funds come from the FAA. You get a minimum of $150,000 a year from the FAA. The DOTD covers the remaining 5% of the FAA funded projects. And then there's other opportunities out there that could be pursued for various projects on an as-needed basis from the LADOTD. And really, the hangar developments that we're illustrating, I don't think the city is looking to foot the bill for those. They're looking for private development interests. And a plan like this allows you to show a lot of people who are interested out there in relocating aircraft to different airports where there's less congestion. They don't have to face expensive hangar rental costs. It's convenient. Those type of things are all encourageable, and like I mentioned, your hangar development opportunities are limitless, really, in terms of what you can do compared to what you have now. Your next project, I think you've all discussed this during city council meetings, is the taxiway lighting rehabilitation. We're in the process of developing a 20-year capital improvement plan for the development shown on the ALP. I know the ALP shows developments far beyond the 20-year planning period, but we want to provide you with a general idea of what projects are going to cost you, so you can, as you do your annual CIP updates with the mayor and Brent, you all can decide what projects are most worthwhile considering the available funds. So this is what the document that goes to the FAA that has to be signed for approval looks like. This is one of many drawings. And the FAA's concurrence with this, we'll be sending this probably to the FAA and the LADOTD over the next month or so, whenever we can wrap everything up. And their approval with it just generally concurs that they agree with the layout. It doesn't mean that you're locked in with that layout or that you have to pursue the projects illustrated. As I mentioned, it's just a land use analysis and showing you the opportunities for your airport's growth. So that was about it. I kind of went over all these different things, how we're going to submit to the agencies, and the next step is to, I have to work with Brent on a few things to wrap up the study, but after we get the approvals from LADOTD and from FAA, I think you'll have a good plan in place to guide your airport's development for the next 20 years. And you might have to do another one of these type of studies in a few years after a few more facilities are developed and needs change. But I think we've developed a solid growth plan for you guys, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Very good presentation, and enjoyed his presentation earlier today. We have the dual role of developing something that gives us room for growth now, and at the same time that's not so restricted for the future. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask after seeing this presentation? Mr. Elton, you have any comments you'd like to add?
I'm not really so much anything to add other than I think they've done a pretty good job with their drawing sets there, and I think they're giving us some tools that we'll be able to use to market that land that we have out there, since we do have some interest in developing some of those areas. So I think it's going to just work out great to have this done now while we've got the interest in it.
Right. In fact, one of the things we talked about today is developing a plan to market our airport more and put it on the website. We certainly want to showcase all of our efforts, and looking at that area has potential for growth, and the airport is a major part of that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You come to us by way of
Tampa, Florida.
Tampa, Florida.
Early this morning.
These gentlemen have had a long day, but it's been worth it to us to hear this information. Item number 9, Ms. D. Tubbs and Ron Israel, peddlers in the Historic District.
Good evening. I am Dee Tubbs, and I am representing the Historic District Commission. And the Historic District Commission here in Morehouse Parish and in Bastrop, along with Bastrop Main Street, has worked extremely hard for the past 11 years to revitalize the downtown area. And I think that we can all agree that the work has made a positive impact on the city and the parish. As a commission, we work with the downtown property owners as unbiased group of citizens to help them improve their property values and increase the revenues they receive as retail merchants. we've been made aware of peddlers setting up in the downtown in the historic district, and as a commission, we feel it takes away from everything that we have been striving to protect. Roadside peddlers cheapens the image of the downtown area as well as takes money out of merchants' hands, these merchants who pay sales tax on a monthly basis, year to year. So the Historic District Commission respectfully requests that the council looks at and adopts a resolution banning all peddlers from the Historic District area.
Thank you, Ms. Tubbs. Mr. Israel?
Thank you. On behalf of the Bastrop Retailers Association, I thank you for the time that you've allotted for us to be here and to discuss this matter with you. Let me just say, first of all, that I, in particular, have been concerned for some time with peddlers who set up all throughout the city of Bastrop. You know, if you drive through town, you see them from time to time pretty regularly. And they, as a retailer and as somebody who's trying to do business in this town, it's very disconcerting because a lot of times these folks come in and they are carrying things that are similar to what you carry, and they are in and out, and it's just a very difficult situation as someone who tries to make a living in Bastrop. And that's sort of my point in saying that we think that they should be banned from the city. I think the independent business owners who are here really are the bedrock of Bastrop. I mean, if you think about it, we live in the community. We buy our gas and our groceries here. We employ people who work for us and who have jobs because of our businesses. More importantly, we collect sales tax for the city, and those of us who own our own buildings pay property taxes to the city. And that's a big issue. If you think about it for just a moment, if you'll just kind of picture the square in your mind, and even beyond the square, because there are other businesses beyond the square, but let's just talk about the square for a moment. Can you imagine if the square did not have Witt's Pharmacy or Steve's Jewelry or Freckled Frog or Seligman's? I mean, what would that look like, and what would that mean in terms of the lack of income for the city, property tax income? And as I said, these people who come in compete directly with us in many cases. And so what they're doing is they're taking business away from us, which in turn creates problems for us financially. And the other factor I want to mention in all of this is that we're trying to make a go of it here in perhaps the worst economic time in Bastrop's history. And so you got to think about all these issues and how it affects us when a peddler sets up shop here in Bastrop. One other aspect in this is that a lot of these folks who pull up with a truck or set up a tent or a table are carrying counterfeit goods. They're carrying illegal merchandise. I'm a Nike dealer, and I can tell you that Nike does not give the opportunity to sell to people who run around in trucks. And what happens in many cases is these folks are selling substandard goods that are made somewhere else as legitimate product. And another little story I'll tell you here for just a moment. This happened today in my store. I had a gentleman walk in the store. He was looking for a Nike T-shirt. And so I started to talk to him and show him what I had. And he said, yeah, I want to match the shoes I bought. I said, oh, great. Where did you get your shoes? She got the shoes from a guy pulled up in a truck. Okay? Well, there was a sale that I perhaps missed. And it's just not, this whole situation is very difficult for all of us who are independent business owners. the other thing I want to mention, and Ron Carter touched on this, you know, these folks, by and large, are coming into town, and they are not paying sales tax. They deal almost exclusively in cash. And so even if Ron were to collect some sales tax from one of these folks, I highly suspect that it would not be an accurate representation of what they took in. So the last thing I'd like to say to you is that we had a meeting of the Bastrop Retailers Association, and several of the members are here this evening. You can see them in the audience. We took a vote, and we asked our membership, you know, would you prefer that these folks are banned from the city? And the vote was unanimous, that the Retailers Association does not want peddlers in the city of Bastrop. So we would ask for you to please seriously consider what we're requesting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tubbs and Mr. Israel. The 2 points that I want to mention as it relates to item number 9, peddlers in the historic district, and Mr. Israel, you said banning it from the city, so that poses 2 different situations. And I want to say thank you to both of you because of your service to the historic district and holding up the banner for preservation of it. And to our retail association, thank you for the goods and services that you provide to this city, and you certainly are deserving of all the respect that warrants operating a business because you pay the cost to do so. With that being said, Mr. Lawrence and I did talk about some alternatives that we may have to support the historic district. And at the same time, it wouldn't be my suggestion to tread on anybody's constitutional right to operate in terms of that. So I'm going to ask the city attorney if he will speak to some of the things that we talked about to hold up the banner for the historic district in terms of restricting, imposing restrictions on peddlers where they can set up camp. And Mr. Lawrence, you might want to speak to what kind of restrictions may be if we tried to ban it altogether. Would we be infringing on anybody's constitutional right?
If we took the step of banning it altogether, I would like to take a closer look at that issue. The conversations that I've had leading up to this point have been about banning it from the historic district, the 8-block area. And in those preliminary conversations, I made it clear that I believe that the city does have the authority, because that was the question that I got. Does the city have the authority to do that? The answer is yes. And I think without looking at it further, and I said before I would want to do that, that the city also has the ability to impose some additional restrictions citywide if that's what it desires to do as well. But if we take the step of saying totally, that's something that I would really want to visit if we're talking about a total citywide restriction of it. The one other thing that I've done is after talking with you, Mayor, and talking with Mrs. Tubbs, we prepared a draft ordinance. We have it here tonight, which would deal with the historic district area as being a prohibited area. One of the reasons that I have some hesitancy, too, about a complete ban is we put in this ordinance that regarding the historic district, there can be some exemptions on I'm going to say on a individual basis. I thought about fairs, festivals. I was just trying to imagine every kind of activity where this type of activity might happen, where you might want some exclusions. But you absolutely do have the right to say, no, not in this area. And if I would have had that more expansive conversation earlier about the whole city, I would have looked at that, but I haven't looked at that. So whatever your pleasure is, if you want me to look at it in terms of the whole city, I'll look at it. If you want to move forward on this issue, preliminarily, we do have an ordinance right now that we can introduce, make modifications to it if necessary, and take up by the next council meeting, which would be the normal course of things. But I really need feedback from you on this concept of doing it citywide. I want to know what it is that you think.
Council members, this is your opportunity to have some dialogue. As Mr. Lawrence just indicated, we were more prepared to address it from one perspective, which is to issue the restriction on the peddlers, because that's certainly the line of least resistance in terms of handling it, rather than banning it citywide. We have so many other things that we have to consider. So at this time, I'll entertain feedback from council members.
Well, my opinion, I don't have no problem banning it from around the historic district. That area, I am in agree with that. Now, as far as banning the whole citywide, no.
Well, I agree with Mr. Armstrong at this particular time. Let's just focus on this introduction only tonight. And we'll get with Mr. Lawrence and get some feedback and see when we come up with for us citywide. But tonight, only the historic district is my opinion.
Any other comments from council members expressing your views? Because we are going to expand the agenda, and we are prepared to introduce an ordinance in putting some restrictions on the acquisition of the peddler's license itself. Mr. Moore?
Ms. Goldman, do you know the exact amount that we get from the peddlers that do come?
No, sir, I can look that up tomorrow and give y'all a call if you'd like.
Well, because in my personal opinion, our first priority should be the business owners that are here tonight. You know, that's my first priority. So I do agree with what they said, because they are the livelihood of this city, and they employ the people here.
Mr. Locke?
I think what we're saying is we all have that same consensus that we want to look at the historical district tonight. I don't think any of us prepared to look at the whole city, about an ordinance for the whole city.
Well, I can tell you what we have to put on the table tonight is definitely one that would do a ban for the 8-block area in the historic district. I'll do some additional research just in case about it citywide, but we are ready whenever if the agenda is expanded.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, sir.
Within that 8 blocks?
Yes, sir.
Now, just say the private owners, in other words, that would trump them also. In other words, they cannot allow a peddler to sell on their private property if we adopt this ordinance here.
Right. In other words, I guess a good illustration of what you're saying, Mr. Armstrong, is if I own some land or a lot or a facility in the 8-block area, and I decided to lease it to Ms. Goldman here because she has a peddler's license and she wants to use my spot to sell some wares or whatever, that would be restricted. That would be restricted because unlike Mr. Israel and unlike others, I'm not the owner of my retail establishment. I am instead a property owner that's leasing to her who's doing a peddling type of activity. So that would be restricted.
Listening to your comments, I see that there's a general consensus to move forward with what you have prepared for us, Mr. Lawrence, under the expanded portion of the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you for your presentations, and Mr. Carter, thank you for your comments. Would you come back to the podium, please?
Mr. Lawrence, if you're going to, considering the whole city, maybe we need to get with the police jury, the sheriff's office, and who also have sales tax ordinances, and maybe making a restriction on maybe, I know one state, they had peddlers, they had to, in other words, when they got their peddler's license, they had to put up a bond or something to cover their sales tax for that? Could we do something like that? Maybe if you did with everyone did an ordinance together?
That's possible. What we have is a separate peddler's license, and we can attach certain requirements onto the tax, or we can associate those requirements with the tax that you have to pay to get that license. And if I understand you right, you're saying when you come in to get your license to be a peddler, you, in addition to that, post some type of a bond.
So to cover the sales tax portion, not only for the city, but for the police jury, sheriff's office, school board, everyone that's in the parish, all the taxing entities.
I follow you.
You may have to. I mean, each entity may have to pass the same type of ordinance. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay.
That's right. That would be. You would want them to do that. You certainly would want them,
everybody get their. What I'm looking for is trying to get a way to get everybody to get their sales tax money. I mean, I understand that. What is it? 60% of y'all's budget comes from sales tax, approximately. I don't know how much money we're losing by sales tax as peddlers, but I do know we lose some. And I can spend thousands of dollars and maybe collect 100, but to me, it's not worth that. But if we had something like that in the ordinance, an ordinance that says, okay, if you're going to peddle in the parish, or if you're going to peddle in the city limits, we need this. We need a bond of this much posted, or cash deposit of some type. You see what I'm saying?
I think that it's worth consideration. I guess one of the things that I would see in that too, when you look at how that would play out, how would you enforce it? How would you know that I slipped into town and sold 20 pairs of Nike shoes, and then I left? How would you know that? So I'm not saying don't do what you said. I'm saying I think that it's going to be some more to it as well, because now we're actually talking about two things. One, we're saying we don't want you to sell either in the city or in certain geographic areas in the city. Your question is, how do we get these folks who are slipping out, who are not paying those taxes? I like the idea of a bond.
I do too.
The question is, though, that insurance company that provided that bond, or the folks who put up that bond who are going to forfeit it, when you find out that so-and-so didn't pay that money, how much are they going to forfeit? How much is that insurance company going to pay? You can answer that if you knew that I sold 20 pairs of Nikes. But if you don't know what I sold...
Well, what my idea would, on something like that, if you put up a $1,500 bond and you don't report to me...
The whole thing?
I'll take the whole thing. I mean, we'd have to look at the sales tax laws. Sales tax laws say I make a recommendation, or I can make an estimate of what you sold,
right,
based on the best knowledge I have. Best knowledge I have is you got a $1,500 bond out there. I want all of it, and I'll just distribute between the entities.
Understood.
I don't know what the legal concept of that is. I mean, that. Maybe.
But I think the legal concept is going to be, how do we know how much I sold but didn't report? Since I'm itinerant, I'm not fixed. I can run off. I go to another city, another city, another city.
But the thing is that if you run off, then I think you forfeit the whole bond.
Right. Well, I mean, that's how it logically, I guess.
That'd be the logical thing to do.
Yeah.
And that way, maybe that would stop them from running off. At least they come in and make a report to me.
Right. I think it's worth considering.
Okay. I mean, like I say, I don't know what the legal concept of if we were able to do that or not, but we've got to do something. I mean, these people come and go, and I never see them more than once or twice.
Right.
Question, but it sounds like we're talking about two different issues right now.
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay.
Yeah,
They're related. They're related,
Yeah.
I think, mainly.
There are some relation, but
Mr. Israel raised the issue, and Mr. Carter too. They both said, by the way, this same population of folks are not remitting their sales tax.
So we're talking about another different issue then.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is something we need to look at.
Okay, too.
I think Mr. Lawrence needs to kind of look at some of the legal concepts that we talked about.
Right.
And maybe get with some of the other attorneys from like the school board and the police jury and maybe the sheriff's office.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Mr. Carter. When you first raised your hand, I didn't know whether I woke you up or not, but I can see you're quite alert. Just joking, Mr. Carter. I believe, again, based on the comments, that the council is ready to move forward. The retail association is ready to feel some immediate relief, and also the appearance of downtown with peddlers on the sideline when you got merchants who pay the cost to operate business. I still believe that's the consensus of this council to move forward in that respect, and if we have to fine-tune something at a later date, then certainly we're open to that. Item number 10, Resolution 11-1414, authorizing the City of Bastrop through its mayor to make application to the fiscal year 2012-2013 Louisiana Community Development Program for a grant in order to make improvements to the city streets. Mr. McKee.
Mayor, Council.
Yes, sir.
This item is with regard to the CDBG grant that we're applying for. And, of course, the mayor has to have permission from the council to apply for it. It's for street improvements. We're going to see if we can pair some of our street tax money with grant money to do some street improvements.
Do you have any questions? At this time, I will entertain a motion on Resolution 11-1414, authorizing the City of Bastrop through the mayor to make application in this respect as presented.
So move.
Properly moved by Mr. Johnson
Second.
and second by Mr. Locke. Thank you, Mr. McKee. Well, you may as well stay there, Mr. McKee.
Mayor, we need a vote.
Okay. That's right. Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. What streets, Mr. McKee, I know you looked that information up, that I made a presentation recently. What streets we did?
That we did in the last.
Right.
Hoover, Pearl, Forest, Highland.
So we are excited with having done that. We did get a lot of responses from citizens that drive up and down those streets. Item number 11, Resolution 11-1415, a resolution declaring certain movable property no longer needed for public use, authorizing the sale of movable property by sealed bid, and providing for publication in accordance with the law. Mr. McKee.
Mayor, if I may, I left off the street.
West Mass.
MLK South.
MLK South.
Let's not leave off.
We have some surplus chairs. We were lucky enough to get a grant, as you well know, Mayor, and we replaced all the chairs at the Municipal Center, and we farmed out the chairs that were salvageable that we could still use to other buildings that we have, and we have some surplus chairs that we'd like to get permission to put up for sealed bid.
At this time, I will entertain a motion on Resolution 11-1415.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Properly moved by Mr. Moore and second by Mr. Armstrong. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McKee. Item number 12, ordinance 11-4205, an ordinance to enact section 8-191 of the regulatory ordinances forming the criminal code of the city of Bastrop to prohibit the display, keeping, and/or transfer of ownership by the sale or otherwise of animals in certain restricted areas of the city, to repeal all other sections of the code of ordinances that are inconsistent with said prohibition, and otherwise providing with respect thereto. This is an item to be voted on tonight. It has been in the layover mode for the 30 days. At this time, I will entertain a motion on this ordinance.
Mayor, I make that motion.
Properly moved by Mr. Johnson
Second.
and second by Mr. Locke. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 13, liquor license renewal. Chief Downey Black.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, I'd like to recommend that the following establishments, that you approve their renewals for their licenses for the year 2012. Stop For You Incorporated, 1920 West Madison, a Class A dealer, retail dealer off premises only. That's the Citgo station there at Camel, West Madison. Hester's Jiffy Pack, 741 Collingston Road, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Spirit Stop and Save, 1405 South Washington, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Rite Aid number 7338, 727 North Washington, Class A retail dealer off premises only. A&C Quick Pack, 9505 Carbon Plant Road, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Specialty Daiquiri and Spirits, 1923 North Washington, Class B retail dealer on premises only. Discount Tobacco Outlet number 25, 1414 East Madison, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Fiesta Linda, 1053 East Madison, Class R restaurant. Porter Speed Mart, 1301 North Washington, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Super One Foods, number 603, 2211 East Madison, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Pinky's Quick Stop, 1013 A Ramp, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Walmart Supercenter, number 98, 6091 Marouge Road, Class A retail dealer off premises only. Walgreens, 1930 East Madison, Class A retail dealer off premises only. And finally, the Chevron U-Packet, 1630 East Madison, Class A retail dealer off premises only.
All right, all of these establishments meet the requirement, Chief Black?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, I will entertain a motion for approval of these licenses.
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor, for approval.
Properly moved by Mr. Moore
That's second.
and second by Mr. Johnson. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief Black. Item number 14, discussion action, request to close street right-of-way at Bowden Street and donate land to property owners. Mr. McKee.
Mayor, I believe that yourself and the council have a copy of the plat, and I've also supplied Ms. Goldman and Mr. Lawrence with one. A request has been made from Ms. Connie Sears that the undeveloped portion of the dedicated street of Bowden be given back to the property owners. At this point in time, that they include lots 15, 14, 13, and 12, and lot 11. At this time, I do not believe that the city would be interested nor would have the ability to develop the street any further. It would have to run into the back of some more residential structures. And Mr. Lawrence may be able to add something to this.
Not a whole lot, except to say that if these property owners were the ones who gave this area that's under the right-of-way agreement to us in the first place, if we abandon the project and say we don't want the right-of-ways anymore, it's only right and it's legally correct for it to go back to them. And I think that's the point that I think what we're saying is the same thing.
Yes, sir.
In other words, if you do this, full ownership, free of these right-of-way restrictions, will go back to the folks who gave them to us in the first place. And if you're not going to do anything with this right-of-way, you might as well take it off the books, free us of any liability or responsibility for it, and allow it to revert back.
Okay, do you have any questions that you need clarifying? Oftentimes, over a period of years, the use of property changes, and it is of no value to the people who are trying to do something with it, and really a burden on the city. Is that a good description, gentlemen?
Yes, ma'am.
So it really becomes more valuable to the owners if it reverts back to them. So if you have no questions, I will entertain a motion on this request.
So moved.
Properly moved by Mr. Johnson
Second.
and second by Mr. Locke. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McKee, for your research into that matter. At this time, I will entertain a motion to expand the agenda to discuss ordinance 11-4206 and also request the city attorney to seek the AG opinion on enforcement of sales tax.
I make the motion.
Was that sufficient?
Oh, yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Properly moved by Mr. Locke
Second.
and second by Mr. Moore. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The first item on this expansion that I requested is for ordinance 11-4206, an ordinance to amend 1329 of the regulatory ordinances of the city of Bastrop to restrict the activities of parties to whom peddler's license are issued within the Bastrop Historic District and to otherwise provide with respect thereto. Mr. Lawrence, you want to speak to that?
Yes, this is the ordinance that's for introduction that we talked about earlier. And what it would say is that if we sell you a peddler's license, you cannot engage in the activities that are authorized by that license within the 8-block historic district area. I think our fees are something like $200 for a peddler's license. And I think if you're selling seafood or something like that, it's $100. And I think it's good for a year. I think I read that. So you can do this, engage in this activity anywhere else in the city except in the 8-block historic district area if that ordinance is adopted. It's for introduction now. Be ready for action at the next regular meeting in December. If you want any changes or modifications to it, let me know between now and then.
Okay, this item is for introduction.
Yes.
So there's no need to take a vote on it tonight.
That's correct.
Members of the council? Hey, the next item, that was sufficient, Mr. Lawrence, in terms of it's for introduction.
Yeah.
We didn't need to do anything else? Okay. The next item under this expansion is to seek the Attorney General's opinion on enforcement of sales tax. Mr. Lawrence, you want to speak to that?
Yes, ma'am. Anytime a public body seeks an Attorney General's opinion, it has to have the approval of the council. And what we're asking for, it's on a matter that I'm not prepared to speak to publicly at this point, but it deals with tax collection enforcement, tax abatements, and all things involving taxes that are levied by the city. I would just like to be able to request some guidance from the Attorney General on several issues involving taxes that I will be prepared to share with the city and city officials in due course. So tonight it's a matter of voting to authorize me to be able to ask the Attorney General for the guidance that I need to give to you. Like the other way to say it.
At this time, I will entertain a motion on this request to authorize the city attorney to seek the information as he has provided, so that he can provide you with more information in the future.
May I make that motion?
Probably moved by Mr. Johnson
Second.
and second by Mr. Locke. Are there any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we have heard from everybody. Chief Montgomery, any updates you want to give us? We've heard from Chief Black in terms of liquor license. Okay. Ms. Goldman? Okay. We're about to move into a very busy season with sales tax and collections and license renewals, so the clerk's office is really going to be extremely busy. If there is no further business at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Properly moved by
Second.
Mr. Locke and second by Mr. Johnson. This meeting is, did I need to take a vote on it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.
Nice.